Hey everybody, it's me, Root Beer, and a new set just came out, which means it's time for yet another deck discussion video. So this time we're going to be talking about the venerable Stoeirhaja. So this was the deck that I was most interested in coming into the new set. So it uses a new set of orders called Codex orders that can kind of help you build a board and debuff your opponent. And for each Codex order that you play, you're able to stand one of your rear guards. And if your opponent's grade 3 or greater and you play a Codex, all of your front row gets plus 5k. So Stoeirhaja is the new kind of aggro deck that's coming in and has seen rogue success in Japan. It has a handful of tops, although most of them were in the lower half of top 16, so you get 9th, 12th place, things like that. So, if you have not watched one of these before, how I like to do my deck profiles is, rather than just giving you the static lists, I kind of go over all of the cards that I'm considering putting in the deck and explaining my reasonings for all of them, and then I try to give a couple of different builds, the one that I'm actually planning to play, and then sort of a budget option for the people who can't afford all the crazy staples in this game. So let's get started, shall we? We've already read what Stoeirhaja does, but let's go over the rest of the ride line first. So the grade 2 is that when it is rode upon by Stoeirhaja, you can Soul Blast 1, search your deck for a Codex card, and then shuffle. And then if it's placed on the rearguard circle, if you played a Codex this turn, you can Soul Charge 1 and it gets 5k until the end of turn. The grade 1 is when it's rode upon by the grade 2, you look at the top 7, either choose a grade 3 or greater Stoeirhaja, or add a Codex card from among them. And then on rearguard circle at the end of your turn, if you played a Codex order this turn, you can retire it, choose a Stoeirhaja from your drop zone, and put it in your hand. So, let's start off with reading the Codexes to see what this deck is all about. So we have Principle of Non-Self. You play it if you have a grade 3 or greater Stoeirhaja and did not play an order with the same name this turn. So choose a grade 3 or less card from drop, call it to rearguard circle until end of turn, it gets power plus 5,000, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it gets a red text that when it stands by a card ability, it gets critical plus 1 until end of turn. And I think I forgot to mention it at the beginning, but one of Stoeirhaja's abilities also allows you to play a second order on your turn. However, you can only play Codexes if your opponent is grade 3 or greater. And then for the other one, which is Principle of Unsatisfactoriness. Jesus Christ, why would they name it like that? Principle of Dissatisfaction maybe could be less of a mouthful. Play this if you have a grade 3 or greater Stoeirhaja and didn't play the same name. So until end of your opponent's turn, your opponent gets all of your Vanguards get power minus 3,000, and then if you played another Codex order, you can Soul Blast 2, draw a card, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, your opponent gets all of your Vanguards get drive minus 1. So this is kind of the big thing going for this deck. So non-self lets you build a board and get some good aggression going with the extra power and the critical if it restands, and then unsatisfactoriness lowers your opponent's Vanguard powers, making it 10k, which means suddenly all of your cards that randomly become 25k are now super threatening, because those are 2 cards to guard. And then also, the drive minus 1 means when it gets back to their turn, if they survive, they're now going to be putting on far less pressure with their Vanguard. So, let's now go into all of the rear guards that we're considering. So I'm going to kind of go a little out of order. I'm going to highlight the cards that I think are the most important first, which is obviously the archetypal cards. So we have this grade 3 Hurtful Pompilidio. So when it gets power plus 5,000 for each Codex order that you played this turn. So on your grade 3 turn, it's probably just the 1, so it becomes 18k, which is, even with the reduction, still not an amazing number, but once you get it all going, then it gets 10k to become 23, and then Stoeirhaja boosts it up to 28, which would have been a good number regardless of the debuff, but And if you can call it with, like, non-self, that gets another 5k, pushing it up to, like, 33, which is, like, huge. So, and then the second ability is in the front row. When your Vanguard is attacked by your opponent's rear guard, you can retire it. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and decrease the unit's power by that unit's original power until end of turn. So, typically going to be like 10, 13k, which isn't always going to, like, make a huge difference, especially if your opponent, like, starts persona riding or just, like, naturally buffs up your cards, but it is something that can help kind of, like, mitigate the damage. It also helps to get around certain things, like Varga has the grade 1 that randomly stops intercepting, so, that can bypass that. And if your opponent is playing a deck that restands their rear guard, something like Blankmeyer with Alchemist, or obviously Shiranui, like, that can also help, like, sink the power, which means overall turn is just weaker. So, a nice card to have. It's not a card that's, like, played at super high number if you look at topping lists, probably because, like, it doesn't gain you a lot of, like, advantage. It does, like, sort of help you defensively, but it also means you're gonna have to, like, find it and, like, call it back with non-self to kind of cycle it over and over again. So, like, not always the best option, but it is a very good card, and I do like playing with it. Like, it felt really helpful when I tried it at locals today. Second off, fly over Vivartica. Fly over Vivartica. So, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, you counterblast 1, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose a Codex card from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. If you did not reveal a card, draw. And similar to Pomplidio, it also gets 5k for each Codex order you played, so can become 15 or 20, and combined with Stoeirhaja's plus 5,000 becomes like 25 on its own, which, because of unsatisfaction, your opponent will actually need like 2 cards for this, so actually does put on a lot of pressure for you. It is also obviously like a very strong searcher, being able to grab your orders, or if you didn't find an order or it's late game and you've already searched them all out, it still draws you a card, so like it's always getting you some sort of advantage. A very powerful card for the deck, to be sure. Next up, a card that is unfortunately feels very non-negotiable, and Amicable Maiden Alvina. So this is the new R generic card that was introduced in set 3, and it is already, at the time of recording, $15, so sorry budget players. This card is very strong. When it's placed on rearguard circle from the hand, other than during the battle phase, because we cannot ever accidentally give the deck more attacks, Energy Blast 3 and perform one of the following. Choose an order card without Regalis from your drop zone, put it into your hand, or choose a grade 1 or less unit from your drop zone and call it to rearguard circle. And during your turn, if you have 4 or more units, this gets power plus 2,000 to become like a 10k booster. So, like I said, Alvina feels non-negotiable because even though you're going to be playing like 6 to 8 of the codexes, I'm personally going to be playing 4 of non-self, 3 of unsatisfactoriness, for a total of 7, and you do have like a lot of search power. Your ride line searches it all out, and you have Vivartica. Like, you still kind of end up in positions where you, like, might not have all the orders you want, either because, like, you didn't see Vivartica and couldn't search as much as you wanted to, or, just, like, the practical reality of the game where, the more orders you search out, the more likely you are to just kind of discard them, either for, like, your ride line or like a PG, just because it's, like, the best choice at that moment. And then, as you're getting later into the game, it's like, oh shit, I need to, like, find my codexes again to be able to, like, continue making pressure. So, that's why, like, Alvina feels very strong. It's just, like, it gives you the flexibility to be able to, like, discard your codexes and get them back later, or if you're just kind of getting grinded out and you end up naturally burning through all your codexes, can kind of help you, like, get them back and keep the pressure up late game. And then, of course, if you see it early, you can, like, discard another grade 1 and then use Alvina to call it back just for a bit of, like, early aggression. So, speaking of the grade 1s, Persist Chlorophorus. So, at the end of the battle, it attacked or boosted. You put it into your soul, look at top 7, choose one Codex card from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So, going into the soul is helpful. Unsatisfactoriness does need to Soul Blast 2 for the drive reduction. And also, like I was saying with Alvina, it's something you can, like, early game with. So, let's say you, like, discard it for your ride line, call Alvina, call back this guy, and then you just have, like, a 16 to 18k column that you can just swing in with, and then it'll, like, go back into the soul and let you search. So you can kind of get a bit of early pressure and value out of it. So, it's a nice little combo, and again, it's just one of the reasons why Alvina feels so indispensable for the deck. And while we're on the subject of expensive staples that, like, help you recycle your orders, Aspronia and Saphira. So this is the Dual Nation card, so when it's placed on rearguard circle from hand, other than during the battle phase, you can look at the top card of your deck, put it at the top or bottom, or discard, or put it at the top of the deck, or discard it. And then you can counterblast one to perform the following. Either choose a normal order from your drop zone and put it into your hand, or choose a grade 2 or greater card from your drop zone and call it to rearguard circle. So, this kind of serves dual purpose. One, obviously, you can use it for, like, early gaming your opponent. So let's say you, like, drop this guy and then Saphira bring it back. So that could be something you can do. If you're playing the Cyclers, which I don't believe I actually put in here. Oops. But if you, like, discard a Cycler, you can just, like, call it back, and then you don't care that much if your opponent gets rid of it. I do have it here in my actual deck list. So, like, Sea Rumble, Brave Shooter. So if you, like, drop that, and then you can, like, call it back with Saphira, or if you're in a position where, like, the best thing to discard early was one of the codexes, you can just, like, get it back so you have it set up for later. You know, all in all, like, Saphira, similar to Alvina, serves a lot of purposes for the deck. Compared to Alvina, I don't think it feels as non-negotiable. Like, another big thing is, like, because the deck doesn't use energy, right? Whereas, you know, you're gonna counterblast for the restand, you're gonna counterblast to search out your orders, and then, like, counterblasting for Saphira as well can feel a little resource-heavy. And to deal with that, that is also why we are considering Prize Trident. So when your other unit attacks, if it's the 5th battle of this turn, you can put it into your soul and soul charge 1. You do get to 5 attacks because Stoeirhaja can restand up to 2 if you play both codexes. And then onto the more, like, iffy options. Prevailing Dragon is kind of the card that I settled on when it comes to trying to replace the utility that Alvina gives you for, like, a budget player. So, at the end of the battle it attacks, if it was placed by a card's ability, you can retire it, then choose a normal or set order from your drop zone and put it into your hand. So, theoretically, you can, like, bring it back with non-self, attack with it, kind of get that value in, and then, you know, it, like, and then it just, like, kills itself to get the non-self back. So you can kind of form this little resource loop where the two of them just kind of keep grabbing each other. Or, you know, you can also grab the other one if that's what you need. It doesn't feel great to do. Like, if you're gonna target something with non-self, you would rather get Vivartica or, like, Popliteau, because, you know, those both gain more power and can therefore get more value out of, like, restanding with a critical. But because, like, our two other options for cycling from the drop zone are so expensive, this is probably the best budget option that you can go for. Speaking of budget options, Knight of Patience Lewis. So this is a card that was just introduced in DZ-BT-03, where on hit, Energy Blast, is it 3? I think it's 3, to choose an order card from your drop zone and put it into your hand. So, compared to the Dragon, it doesn't need to be called by card effect, so you have a little more flexibility in using non-self for something better, but it has to hit. And so, if your opponent can like read into your hand and they think that maybe you're starting to run low on orders, like they are just going to like guard it and potentially cut off your comeback. And then the not quite as budget and, you know, in-game resource expensive card, the Dragon Tree Wretch. So if your Vanguard is greater 3 or greater, you can counterblast, Soul Blast, choose a normal order from your drop and put it back into your hand. So compared to the other two that are around like $13, $15, the Wretch is only about 5, so you know, you can pick up like 2 or 3 of these, and it would be equivalent to one of the other ones. The problem is, the resource cost is just so hefty, right? Like Counterblast and Soul Blast. You already need to be Soul Blasting 2 for unsatisfactoriness. It means you really do have to be playing like Prize Trident or Soul Revolution, which is basically the same thing. Like, if you either like Alchemagic or made 5 or more attacks that turn, you could put it into Soul to countercharge 1. So, unlike Prize Trident, it does it at like the end of the turn, so you have a little more flexibility with like your attack patterns, but both of them fill the same purpose of like getting you Soul and countercharging. But I think if you're going to play the Wretch, you're gonna have to play one of the resource gaining cards. It's like an okay option. Like, unfortunately, none of them quite reach the same level of utility as Alvina. Anyways, and then I guess one more option to like maybe potentially like keep order consistency is Courtier. So this is the generic card that, like, when it's placed from hand, if you didn't play any orders, you can discard a card from your hand, search your deck for an order without Regala's Piece, and it gets the ability that you can like play it from the drop zone and put it back into your deck. So like, I don't love this card because you already have a lot of ways to like search your deck for orders. You know, the Ride Line does it, Vivartika does it, you know, the grade 1 does it. So you already have a lot of ways to get orders out of the deck, and this doesn't really help with the problem of like, if you run through all of your orders, then you're just gonna have to like find a way to cycle them back. It's one of those like, okay, theoretically, if you play it in place of one of the other searchers, then you can like get it from the deck, play it from the deck, and then like it'll shuffle back in so that maybe you can search it out again later, and that is a way you can like extend the usage of your orders. And it is also like cheap, it's like $2. So if you are on a really tight budget and you can't afford all of the better options, like this is something you could do that can like kinda help with like long-term sustainability. It's just not like super great at it. So now, moving on to just kind of miscellaneous utility and like potentially interesting techs. So, the other Dual Nation with Dragon Empire, this one just makes a plant token for you and gives all of your rearguards that are replaced by a card ability this turn 5k. So like, if you call something off of non-self, you know, it's gonna get 5k from the non-self, and then this can give it an additional 5, just kind of push your number a little bit higher. Also, just like making a plant token is something that can like just kind of help you be a little more aggressive, just have that board presence ready for you. So it's not amazing. I wouldn't consider it if you don't have to, because all of the Dual Nations are at least a little bit expensive, but if you happen to have it, it could be something you can consider. Speaking of cards that kind of get bodies on the board, there's also Burrow Mushrooms, where you can just put into Soul and make 2 plant tokens. So, like I said, the deck does need Soul, so Burrow's Mushroom is something that you can consider, just getting you Soul and kind of keeping that board presence for you. And then, if you're going to be playing these like token-making cards, Friendly Broccoli could be something that you like tech in. This card is like $1, and this deck doesn't have a ton of draw power. Like, it has large hand sizes, but frequently the hand is just kind of fake because half of it is going to be your Codex orders. So like, Friendly Broccoli being like a 10k shield if you have a token on board is helpful. Like, if you're gonna play Burrow Mushrooms for the extra Soul, then maybe just playing the 2 of them together could be something that works. We also have Devouring Arm of the Crumbling Sea. So this is just a big beater, right? So if you play a normal order, it gets 5. And then if something was placed from the drop zone this turn, it gets another 5. And then on attack, if it's the 4th battle or more, it gets like another 5. So this is just like, if you can stack all of the buffs together, which you likely will, combined with Stoeirhaja's buff, this is just like 30k by itself, you know? So it is just like a big beefy beater if you wanted to have that. It is also like dirt cheap. There is also Flower Storm Dragon, so this is the generic triple or the generic double R's from this set. They all kind of have the same ability where if it's discarded during your turn, you can Soul Blast, call it to Rearguard Circle, and if it is the battle phase, then you cannot attack. And then if an order card was put into drop zone, it gets boost. So all of them kind of have a boost effect. This is like a 10k booster. I've seen a couple of lists from Japan playing it. I'm not entirely sure why. It doesn't seem all that useful compared to the other options, but it does synergize with the deck, so it is a nice budget option if you want it. And then next up, Prison Dragon. I'm putting the waifu art in here because that's what I saw first, but it's Prison Dragon, so, you know, when you play an order, you can call it from the drop zone, give it, like, either 10k or give it a crit. We don't Alchemagic in this deck, so we're not getting both. The unfortunate downside of playing Prison Dragon is, 1, you don't have a way to get rid of it, and 2, it's very small. So if you were to, like, stack up the buff from, like, Stoeirhaja, then it can get to, like, 10k, 20 with Persona Ride if you wanted to give it the crit. Or you can make it like 20 to 30 with Persona Ride, and it's still like a free body that you can get out from the drop zone. So if you're playing something like Blangdmire or Varga, or I guess now even like Shoujo Doji can get rid of your board. So if you just like want more consistent board presence, non-self only gets you like the 1, so maybe if you tech like 1 or 2 copies of Prison Dragon, that can turn non-self into like a 2-for-1 call. So in like the later game, if you're playing a deck with strong control, or strong removal, I should say, then like that is a way for you to like rebuild your board and kind of continue making pressure. Inlet Pulse Dragon, so this deck does need Soul, and it can make 4 attacks, so it does synergize with Inlet Pulse. This card is still $22 for some reason, even though I think most decks are off of it now, but, you know, if you wanted Soul and you wanted a way to just kind of dig further into the deck, which you kind of do need, Inlet Pulse Dragon does work if you happen to have it lying around. And then, of course, kind of the... first off, Clapping Dragon is just kind of in here because it says draw a card. I don't even know if you can consistently get to, like, 3 back row units. What you could maybe do is, like, call 2 things and then just, like, put something in the back to activate Clapping Dragon and then just, like, move it to the front. But this is mostly here just because it says draw a card, and this deck does run lean on hand size. I don't think you're actually going to try playing this card, but it is there for you if you want it. And then finally, some defensive text. So, the Jeweled Beast, of course, gives you just like a 20k shield, and it does like also soul charge and give things power, so it can kind of help you push for game if you're just a little bit short on resources. And then for the Regalis pieces, we can't play any of the normal orders because this deck has to play the Sutras. So we have Transfear in here and then Twin Cast. Personally, I'm using Twin Cast right now. I do think, like, although the numbers aren't quite as good, like, the double shield ability is helpful in the long term. Like, if you draw it early, even, you could, like, play it to get the, like, plus 10,000 for one attack, and then remove it from the drop zone to, like, block another attack if your opponent is really going in hard at you. So, yeah. That's all of the things I'm kind of thinking of off of the top of my head. Let's get into the actual, like, 2 lists that I've thought up. So, the first one is the actual list that I am probably playing IRL. So, we're playing our 3 Persona Rides, of course. We're playing 2 of the Grade 3. Like I said, I think it's a good card. Like, it has pretty decent defensive utility, and it's a strong beater, but there are going to be times where you, like, need to cycle your orders, and this card doesn't help you with that, so only playing 2. And then, of course, we're playing 4 of the grade 2. So, like I said, this is your main searcher. It gets you advantage if you already have enough codexes. And similar to the grade 3, it is a 20k beater, 25 with Stoeirhaja, which is a good number because of your codex orders. Then we're playing 3 Saphira. It's a good for early game rushing. Late game, it can give you a bit of utility, cycling back your codexes if you just, like, need to make a play. Sea Rumble Brave Shooter, so like I said, it's the cycler. Energy is kind of free, so you can just drop it early to draw cards, and then you could potentially call it back later as just a guy. But also, like, the on-play effect when it comes into the field is also useful. This is another card that can just, like, get back an order from the drop zone, and then you can just, like, discard a unit card you were planning to call or something if you're grabbing non-self. For Alvina, because like I said, you want to be able to cycle your order cards, and then of course the potential utility of also just reviving a grade 1. We're gonna play 3 of Chloroforce, so this can be used as just like a guy to beat in early and then help you like search out your codexes and thin out your deck. We don't necessarily need like 4 of it. I could maybe see a world where I cut one just to get like a prize trident in case I need the countercharging. And then of course we're playing our Sentinels, so 3 regular PGs, 1 Sanctitude. I am playing 7 orders, so 4 of non-self. I think this is the more important one. Like, the crit ability does put on pressure for your opponent and kind of forces them to address your restanding rear guard. So if you can only play 1 order that turn, it's probably going to be this one. But also, like, you have to have already played another codex to get the, like, drive reduction, which means most of the time you're just gonna lead non-self before unsatisfactoriness. So that's why I'm playing more of non-self compared to unsatisfactoriness. I could also see myself maybe just playing 6 orders total, and like 2 of the grade 1 to kind of slot into prize tridents. Like, that's something you could like maybe do. Right now I'm going for like 7 crit 4 draw. Like I said during the like discussion portion of this, the deck tends to run kind of light on hand size. Vivertica is the only one that can really, like, draw you cards. I guess, like, Unsatisfactoriness also does it, but it is trading 1 for the order itself. So it's like, you only have a couple of draw cards, you're not plussing to, like, an extreme amount. Frequently, I found myself having decently sized hands, but a sizable chunk of it was the codexes, so it was kind of fake. So, you know, just a bit of extra draw power to kind of help you out. And then for heal triggers, I'm playing 1 of each counter heal. There's just too many decks in the meta that can do like 1 or the other. So like we have Varga and Dayusha. Like Blindmire can kind of do both. Dayusha actually also does both. Like Dayusha can gain a crit, Blindmire gains a crit. Blindmire also restands a thing. Varga obviously restands, Shiranui restands. Like, there's so many things that, like, play into the counter heals right now that I think it is probably worth having 1 of each. Then we have 2 regular heals, and for the OT, quite frankly, any of them could potentially work. Like, all of them have their utilities, so obviously Bless Favor just being every trigger at once is, like, always going to be at least decent. I'm personally playing the red OT in my list right now. That's partially just laziness, because it's what was already in my Stoeirhaja sleeves. But you could play this, you could play the red one, you could play the blue one, because just an oversized crit trigger is fine. Like, you can kind of emulate the utility of drawing a card by, like, getting something back from the drop zone. You can also play the purple one to, like, cycle something from the damage zone. So if you damage, like, a Persona Ride or one of the codexes, you can get it back. But, like, Bless Favor does kind of do all of that on its own, because it's, like, a draw and a heal and a front. So probably this is just the best option that you have. And then we're playing 1 Twin Cast because we have the space for it, and it has, like, that early game utility. And then for the slightly more budget option, I have cut all of the generic staples, so no Saphira, no Sea Rumble, no Alvina. Instead, I am putting 2 of the Dragon Tree Wretch. Like I said, not the cheapest card ever, it's still about $5, but hey, 2 of these is still cheaper than 1 Alvina, right? So this is a way to like cycle back orders in the late game if you need that. We are also going to cope a little bit on Prevailing Dragon as like another way to cycle back your orders. Because we're cutting so many cards, we now have a bit of room to play Prize Trident, and then just to kind of round out the deck, we're playing Devouring Arm as just like a big guy. So, like, most of these cards are pennies. It really is just the Dragon Tree Wretch, and, like, Twin Cast is around, like, $6 to $10 right now, which is not the most expensive thing, but also maybe can be out of reach for some people if they don't have the budget for it. Like, you can always cut it out to kind of increase on one of the other cards. So, yeah, I think that is going to be it for this video. I am quite enjoying Stoeirhaja. I think the deck is, like, super fun. It's always nice to be able to just kind of throw down a card early and just start swinging in at your opponent. And, of course, it is very fun to just be able to debuff the hell out of your opponent with unsatisfactoriness and watch them kind of struggle as they're like, 25! Oh crap, that's actually like 2 cards. Aw, man. Or, they're like going in on your turn and it's like, okay, I swing for 20 with 1 drive, and you feel just so much safer either like going for a 1 to pass or even just like taking it because like, it's 1 drive, I can risk it. So yeah, this deck is really fun. It just kind of has that bit of that like glass cannon feel. I felt like defensively the deck is a bit lacking right now, so maybe we'll see a second wave of support or a Band-Aid promo that fixes that. But for now, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye!